I'm joined today by Dallas Brodie to discuss BC's alarming recent court finding, which sets a precedent that existing private property rights, including your private home, are now subordinate to Aboriginal land claims. Dallas is a lawyer currently serving as the MLA for Vancouver Colchena and one of the two co-founders of the new One BC political party. If you've been following her on Twitter, you'll know she's not afraid to dive into the issues that other politicians in this country are too afraid to touch. Dallas, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Julius. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much for coming on. It's great to finally get a chance to meet you. I thought that we would start this by perhaps you could give everybody an overview of this court ruling. I mean, it blew my socks off when I read it on your post first, and I've been reading more about it ever since.
Well, okay, so the decision actually has been 6 years in the making. This has been it's been going on for 6 years apparently. And fun fact, the number of lawyers for the bans in this, 25 lawyers that are listed on the statement of claim, and 25 lawyers for the band, 17 lawyers for the Crown, for a total of 42 lawyers basically employed on this file for the last 6 years. And having been a lawyer at a big firm myself, each of those 25 lawyers who are acting for the bands have a hierarchy of people below them. So the top guy's on the list, but underneath him is another 5, 6, 7, 8 team of, possibly upwards of, could be 7 to 10 people, all the way down to articling student. So I want people to recognize that our party's talked a lot about the reconciliation industry. This is what we're talking about. These lawyers, both for the bands and the Crown, are being paid millions and millions and millions of dollars per year to do these cases. And this is part of what we've been talking about, is reconciliation has become an industry where the good-hearted people of Canada want a better situation for Native people. Everybody's always wanted that. I think that's without question. But the money that's going out is going not to the average person on a band or living in a terrible situation. It's going to this industry, and the lawyers are at the top of the list.
How much
So
of that actually trickles down to is there anything that trickles down to the actual band members, or is it pretty much confined to that group?
Well, we talk about the lawyers, the accountants, the developers, and the consultants, and the chiefs and council are the ones who are, a lot of the money that comes out of both the federal and provincial governments sits at that higher level, but doesn't really trickle down to the people actually living day to day on the reserve. I mean, yes, they might get a payment each once a year. You might get 30,000 in March and 30,000 in September if you're in the band or something. That's just like an example. But there's a whole group of people who are non-Indigenous who are making a killing on being counsel for these bands, and the government gives them the money to sue us so that we can pay them money or give them land. And we're seeing these vast land transfers, massive money transfers, and transfers of power in the last few years that are just staggering. So this case is particularly unbelievable because the judge makes no bones about it, that there's not much left of fee simple ownership. And it's no longer, the question shouldn't be, how do we protect fee simple? I think her words were, how do we protect fee simple from this? She said, well, what's left of fee simple, essentially. And
Yeah.
I don't know if your listeners know what fee simple is, but I just did I learned this in law school, but basically fee simple is a funny word, but it is a word that's developed through the common law over thousands of years. And it is basically an estate in land, a form of freehold ownership. And it is the highest form of ownership recognized by law and the most common type of land ownership in Canada. It grants the owner complete control and exclusive rights over the property without any limitations except taxation, property taxes, debt obligations that you yourself have probably incurred through a bank, like a mortgage, and zoning or building restrictions. Some people might have a restrictive covenant on their land or an easement granting access, but this is the highest form of ownership we have. And you might compare it to the next step down would be cooperative ownership, And then down from there would be condominium ownership, which is slightly different structure. But fee simple is top level. And that fee simple is what most people rely on. They're allowed to demolish the house, sell the house, deny people access to their private property because it's their land. It's their land. You can't come on my land, that kind of thing. So it is sacrosanct and it is now under threat.
So,
And
so technically, it would mean that, in theory, that all of a sudden the band that now shares co-ownership essentially of your land could theoretically come onto your land or involve themselves in the decision making of that property.
yes, and we've already seen steps towards this around the province. It's just that this is now hitting in a major urban area, the city of Richmond. And basically, it says here, the BC Supreme Court judge gave at least $500 million worth of government land in an 800-acre zone in southeast Richmond to the Cowichan First Nation and lit a fuse that could lead to the obliteration of private landowners' legal title in the area.
Wow.
How does that make you feel? Great.
It's surreal.
I mean, it is surreal. And if people are still saying to me, this can't possibly be true, Dallas. Like, you guys, it is true. It's here. And I will, in the course of the interview, we can talk about some of the areas and other areas of the province that have already been impacted by the introduction of DRIPA, which has been another aspect of this sort of land back movement that is changing everything in BC. And we can come to that in a second. But have I covered your question there about the case or?
Yeah, very much so. I think, yeah, I mean, for people to understand the repercussions of this, that it's basically like, as far as I understood, that up until now, until these recent rulings started coming through, land claims were restricted to Crown land, but never affected privately held land, if that's correct.
That's correct. I mean, when they gave title to the Haida Gwaii, which used to be called the Queen Charlotte Islands, the Queen Charlotte Islands were first renamed Haida Gwaii. I can't remember the year that happened. And now the Haida Nation Recognition Act was passed. What's the year? I'll find the year. It was, but I'll come back to the year. It was recent, and it was met with great excitement in the legislature because basically they're being granted ownership over the whole island. And it remains there are private families there who are non-Indigenous who own homes on Haida Gwaii. And it's still not being specifically explained how the fee simple of those people now butts up against basically the ownership that they've given the band over the whole island. And it's leading to some bizarre situations. One thing that recently happened in Haida Gwaii is that there was a alleged murder. Someone ran someone down. Apparently an Indigenous person ran down another Indigenous person. It was believed that the person who ran him down was dealing drugs on the island. And so the Haida Nation decided it's time to do things our way. And they went over to the homes of the relatives of the alleged perpetrator and took a bulldozer and tore down their homes and then chased the entire family off the islands. And they followed them in cars. This was all reported in live action on even the legacy media, surprise, surprise, reported on this, showed them, they told all the other bands not to let any of these people onto any of their places, so nowhere safe to go for these people. And they were basically saying, this is our old ways and we're going back to doing justice the way we want because your colonial ways aren't working for us. And, don't get me wrong, I get it that people want to get rid of an horrible drug dealers who aren't being dealt with firmly with our justice system. I get it. I'm angry at our justice system.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
hope. But you see what's happening here, and nobody wanted to comment because if you comment on that, say, you guys, you can't do that. Now you're a racist. Or you're a something bad that you're not allowed to be, and you will be speech policed for commenting on this. But imagine if we all decided I get to go over and just wreck the home of another family I hate. And we all have people we don't like, and we all have bad people in our neighborhoods. But unfortunately, we do have a process. It's not working very well these days, but you can see that's happened there. And coming back to the point of fee simple, the it's still questionable about what's going to happen there, and no one's really answered it. And we get these happy talk about how, oh, it'll all work out. We'll just work it out. But fee simple is supposed to go right down to the center of the earth and up to the sky, above and below your land, with your survey property up and down. That's yours. And so that's in question now. And from what I've been reading a little bit about it, is that they're saying you may own your house, but what's underneath you isn't yours anymore.
Well,
And
and what we keep seeing is that it's basically like a fourth tier of government. It goes beyond even the ownership, that like any development permit, anything else, you're now subject to this layer of government that is not accountable to you.
that's correct. And that's a really important point you just raised, because not only are they not accountable to you, but under the Indian Act, the Federal Indian Act, the chief and council are mandated with a fiduciary obligation only to their members, to no one else.
Right.
So they don't even have the legal right to take into account, or duty to take into account, anybody else. They only owe an obligation to their members. So that's an interesting dynamic. And what we're seeing, okay, so I don't want to jump ahead too far, but basically, yes, we are creating another level of government, and nobody really understands that this is happening, because it's really being done, I would say, on the sly, very quietly, behind closed doors, and it's been on steroids moving forward since the NDP first got elected. What is it, 8 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been moving ahead apace. Oh, yeah. And people are still asleep to it, because they don't, and even when it's reported, it's just sort of quietly sent out on a Friday. Or like right now, a lot of things are being done right here in the depths of summer, when everybody's trying to do things with their children, focused on summer holidays. This is a trick that I've learned that government uses when they want to do something really dirty on the people. I call it stealth government. They break something horrible right before summer, when everybody's trying to get their kids out of school. They're going to hockey championships, dance competitions, piano, all that stuff that happens at the end of the year. And people are like crazy with their families. They don't have time for this. And then no one sees it. Then the other time they like to use is right before Christmas, when everybody's also freaking out, trying to get their families organized, stress from family stuff that's going on. Who reads the paper right before Christmas, right? And then Christmas holidays go by, the new year comes, and it's done. It's over. Bye. And now, right now, things are happening. I don't think it was planned, that maybe it was planned this judgment came out this week, but here we are in the, deep in the dog days of summer. And this explosive case that runs over an absurd over 800 pages long. How many pages was it? It's huge. Anyway, it's like 800 and some odd pages. Maybe I'll get to read it all, but there are some standout quotes coming from it. But, this is really, I consider it dirty play by our government, and it's got to stop, because British Columbians have no idea what's happening under their feet. And it's disrespectful. And
Well, what I found so shocking is that the judge, I mean, shouldn't the judge be, simultaneously working to protect existing Canadians? Like, is this blatant judicial activism, or is this the ideology that, is it part of this DRIPA where they're mandated to make these rulings? Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
the judges aren't mandated, but I would say that there has been judicial activism going on ever since the Constitution Act of 1982 was passed, when we repatriated our charter and we sort of separated from Britain and this big hoopla under, Pierre Trudeau, and we repatriated our constitution, and we came up with the Constitution Act of 1982. And in the Constitution Act, of course, was Section 35, which is the basis for all of this. And it's the one that basically said no existing Aboriginal treaties are affected by this Constitution. But it was only, it's one line. It's almost nothing. It's so thin, right? So nobody really knew what this meant. It's all it says is that, I'll just read it to you. The Section 35 reads as follows: the existing Aboriginal and treaty rights of the Aboriginal peoples of Canada are hereby recognized and affirmed. That's it.
Hmm.
The existing Aboriginal and treaty rights. So this was so thin. And okay, so two things happened, in my humble opinion. Judges, things went to court. Judges start to try and fill in what this means. And it's been this build where there have been, some just the mind-blowing cases of Delgamuukw, um, the Chilcotin. There was another major one that they're going to escape me now. I'll think of them later. But there's been this series of case law that has basically judges decided what these rights were going to be. And politicians should have been doing it. And why weren't they? Because it's such a hot potato topic. And that's simply explained because I'm now seeing into the ledge. It's the worst topic to bring up. Look what has happened to me for saying a true thing, which was approved by my party.
Yeah.
Some Indigenous activists within our party flipped out, said she's got to take it down, and it became this fight. And I was tossed because I was the easier thing to get rid of than to bring up this horrible issue that politicians don't want to deal with it because I think it really is, it's so radioactive and people don't want to be called a racist.
Yeah.
I think that's, and that expression, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
I think that's applicable here.
Very much so. Yeah, I
And
think
yeah,
I was going to say in that case, I think you mentioned that there still hadn't been any bodies found, and that was enough to trigger that, right?
yes.
At the Kamloops residential schools, just so
This is,
listeners can
yes,
catch up.
the Kamloops Indian Residential School, this all started in 2021. I think it was May of 2021. There was this big announcement. We were all sort of in the midst of COVID back then. And I'm sure a lot of people remember that suddenly this horrific announcement had come that there was a mass grave of 215 babies and children that had been discovered at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. Well, as a result of that explosive story, it went viral around the world. The UN declared Canada a genocidal nation. The New York Times did a piece, just cover of the paper, Canada's genocidal past. I can't remember the exact title, but it was like that. And it was just 60 Minutes did a piece with Anderson Cooper in these somber tones saying, Canada, this dark and horrible thing, this buried, this mass grave. And we all remember the picture of Justin Trudeau going and kneeling with the teddy bear. You've seen that. And then these, and basically what's happened now is it's turned out that there has been not one body exhumed or excavated there. And it was on the strength of these claims that then expanded across the whole country that there were bodies buried everywhere in unmarked cemeteries of children who were killed en masse, that the federal government started pumping out money to everybody to start excavating all across the country. That funding was cut off right around the time I was kicked out of the party. That funding was terminated very quietly. No legacy media reported on that. I noticed that they reported on me big time. Oh, I
Oh
was a big,
yeah.
but that funding cut, and I think it was something, it had reached over $700 million or something, and they just said, look, you're not finding anything, so we have to stop this. And then the story about Kamloops, which that band specifically had received $12.1 million earmarked to do the excavations. Earmarked. So it's like me saying, Julius, I'm giving you this money. This is to buy the dental equipment you need. The government's going to support, you're not a dentist, but I'm just
No, no, I
pretending.
know. Yeah.
Say, here's your dental equipment, but you can't go and spend it on a consultant or a designer. And this is what happened. There were all the money was spent, no digging done. And, to my mind, that's not okay. That's taxpayers' money. And I've been criticized for even uttering these words, saying that I have been called insensitive. I've been called a racist. I've been called a denialist, which I'll come back to what denialist means. And I've been called disgraceful, disgusting, uh, hurtful, vicious. I mean, it just goes on and on.
And
Um,
you've been threatened
but-
with criminal.
oh, yes, yes. And then the Union of BC Indian Chiefs also renewed their calls for the federal law that they're pushing for anyone who is a denialist about the residential schools be faced with imprisonment. And in the wake of my situation, they called for this act to be implemented more speedily by Leah Gazan, who's apparently a federal, I don't know, she's probably with the NDP or something. I don't know, liberal. I'm not even sure who she is, but anyway, she's the one who's tabled this bill. And they wanted me to go to jail. And when I asked in the legislature, I said, so, Mr. Speaker, what other true facts are not allowed to be spoken in BC? And then the Union of BC Indian Chiefs tried to say, we never said that we wanted her to go to prison. It's like, yes, they did. Oh, yes, they did. They might want to say, well, we just want the act to be passed, but they would like to probably catch me in that. And there's no question that's where that's headed. So denialism, nobody denies there were Indian residential schools. They were built all over the country. I've been to many of them now. I've seen them, been in them, walked through them. And but denialism is now anything that comes close to questioning anything. You're not allowed to say even, do you think any good came? That's bad. You can't say, like there's a famous artist named Thompson Highway who was in one of the residential schools. He now lives in LA. He became a concert pianist apparently at one of these schools. He learned Brahms and Mozart and Chopin, and he's now a gifted artist and doing really well. And he's even come out saying, whenever I say I actually learned, look what I've gained, he's accused by his by people who are against that, and not just other Indigenous people, but people in general saying you can't say that. The whole thing was bad. And so being a denialist means you're not completely 100% saying the whole thing is a ghastly nightmare and not one good thing happened and it was a cultural genocide. Like it goes on, the definition of what it means goes even broader than that.
Yeah.
So yes, I've been called all those names. It's not been pleasant. And for the record, I'm actually not an insensitive person, but I am a person who seeks truth. And my situation about the Kamloops band came up in the context of the Law Society of British Columbia. There's a lawyer there suing the Law Society for defamation. And that's the first time I think that's ever happened in the history of the Law Society of British Columbia, because they called him a racist and a denialist because he wanted the materials of the Law Society changed to reflect the truth that there have been no bodies found. And he got just pilloried for that.
Yeah,
And so, yeah,
oh,
and his
go
name
ahead.
is Jim Keller. He's a brave guy. And he's taken a lot of abuse too. A lot.
Yeah, it's extraordinary how that complex history has been, boiled down to this one narrative. I mean, to kind of bring it back to the land issue here in Richmond, like what percentage of our, what I think it's 205 bands in British Columbia, what percentage of them actually signed treaties with the federal government years ago?
I don't know the percentage. I'm sure someone on my staff, I don't know the exact number. I know that there are a group of bands up in northern BC called the Treaty 8 bands. They had treaties going way back. There were what was called the Douglas treaties. I'm not an academic in this area, but I've learned a lot in the last little while. But the Douglas treaties were done. But the idea that when British Columbia was first formed, they were saying we're not having any treaties. It was in 1871, I believe, was the date that this is it. And the existing treaties will be honored. And I think that included the Douglas treaties and the Treaty 8 treaties. Someone might be able to correct me on that one, but this is where we're at. And we still, of course, have the reserves. And it gets really complicated because people say, well, what's a reserve? What do you mean sovereignty? What's Aboriginal title? What is territorial rights? Like it's complicated, right? And I think a lot of people don't understand, including a lot of us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's I think the next question in this is like how do you solve this? Because I mean, there are very serious issues that need to be solved on the reservations and with land ownership, and yet like all the solutions that are being put forward are essentially turning this problem or this province into an unworkable situation. So I mean, what's the alternative path?
Well, it is unworkable, and it is literally grinding our province to a halt. Capital doesn't like uncertainty. It operates on confidence. The stock market is purely based on confidence. And once that confidence is lost, it falls apart. And uh, capital naturally moves away, repels from uncertain situations, and will go somewhere. I mean, it's obvious. Are you going to buy a house where you're not sure about the title, or would you rather get one where you're sure what you're getting? So the the way forward, I mean, in this case in particular, let's talk about this, the Cowichan case for now. In this case, we believe that absolutely immediately, David Eby should have, and Nikki Sharma, the Attorney General, should have already announced that they are appealing this case immediately. And my understanding is, as of yet, that has not been said.
Wow.
That's
And is
shocking.
yeah. And what about at the federal level? Is there any noises coming about appealing at the federal level?
I haven't heard anything about that.
Nothing yet.
No. Yeah.
That's surreal.
Yeah. And we're already 6 years into this. And so we've been talking about the whole we actually need an amendment to the Constitution of Canada. Is I mean, we've got okay, so we've got decades of of judicial rulings implementing a racist two-tier constitutional framework. Decades of it. I mean, I think even since I graduated from law school, the charter came in 82. I started law school in 84. So it was all really new. But so that's, you know, 40 years, 30 years. And it's just been this blob that's grown up all through judicial rulings. And our party is saying that the provinces, and we are going to have to get together and discuss an amendment to Section 35 to the Constitution Act. This isn't working. It's not working for anyone. It's not working for bands, the people living on those bands. It might be working for what Francis Widdowson calls the neo-tribal elite, the billionaires that are being created across the country, that sit atop these, what I would refer to as sort of communist ethno-states, where they have a communist system where the land is owned by the band, and each person living there doesn't own fee simple to their land. And they can't sell their property to anyone except for another Indigenous person, and they can't mortgage it, things like that. And so that's a communist form. It's a central ownership model.
Is there resistance at the band level to like at the individual level within the bands to actually, transitioning the reserves to, privately held individual properties? I mean, as far as I understood, like reading through the history, that, the reserve system was meant to be a bridge towards full integration into this different system that was coming in. And yet it's sort of stuck there. And it's like to what degree are the actual members holding that up versus it being a top-down, chief-led thing.
I would say it's a top-down chief-led thing. If you look back to the white paper of 1969 that the prime minister at the time, Pierre Trudeau, and I guess it was his Aboriginal Affairs, Jean Chrétien, who then became prime minister later, they brought out something called the white paper saying we got to stop this. We can't have two different citizens in Canada, and this is what we're doing. And they saw well what was going to happen. And my understanding is that the Assembly of First Nations, which is a group that of 635 chiefs, just said no way. I mean, wouldn't you think that actually people who are having a hard time on a reserve would like to get rid of the reserve system?
Yeah.
But ironically, the leadership of these bands don't want to get rid of the reserve system.
Right.
Like they don't want it gone, and they don't even want the Indian Act gone. I, I mean, this has just been stuff that I've been doing so much reading and learning and coming up to speed on this, and they fight to keep the Indian Act. I mean, wow. Um, which is a really a racist piece of legislation.
Very much so.
And creating this apartness where these people, if you're born into an Indigenous family and you happen to be one of the families that lives there, you have to stay there if you want to keep the things that are good, like your house or your checks or the things that your tax-free status or things. I mean, a lot of Indigenous people have moved off reserve, but you would think that nobody would want this. So
Yeah.
maybe they should vote, or I don't know. I don't know how they would deal with that, but a politician needs to stand up and say, we're not, I mean, our party's saying we want all of this treaties, all of this, we want to defund, first of all, defund the reconciliation industry in BC. No more money. That's it. I defund it and then have everything settled, take the next decade to say we've got a decade to finish it. And after that, this file is closed. People, because we can't go on and on, in my view, forever into the future, dragging this along. Um, People are getting frustrated, um, Indigenous people and non-Indigenous,
That's
about,
driving a huge wedge between everybody. Like it's
yes, yes, it's driving a wedge, and the wedge is getting bigger right now. Like up in an area that's been hit by the DRIPA, which is, have you talked to your audience before about what DRIPA is?
not much, no.
Okay. So DRIPA is it's sort of the DRIPA, the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. It's a very short little act, but the act basically brings something called UNDRIP, which is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and it brings it from the UN and embeds it into BC. And it was passed unanimously. Every single politician in British Columbia supported it.
Wow.
Shock. And every single one, the NDP, the then BC Liberal Party, and the Greens, I don't know how many there were, they all voted unanimously to do this. And now the chickens are coming home to roost about what this meant. All BC, there were 4 things set out in it, but the most important was that every single law in BC has to be brought into alignment with UNDRIP. Now, I know your listeners are probably, their eyes are glazing over and they're going, what's a UNDRIP? What's a DRIPA? And I get that. I get it. But I really recommend, if you have half an hour, just Google UNDRIP and read this document. It's only about 30 pages. It's in big writing and you can read it and see what this document is. I mean, it talks about full return of land and, like it goes on and on. And when I was reading it, what I noticed, it's all about rights and there's zero mention of any responsibilities in it.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're having now is all of our laws in BC, if you can imagine the task that's in front of us and the money that's been dedicated to this, aligning all of our laws with UNDRIP means a rewrite of everything and a reconfiguration and a rethinking, or this woke term, reimagining everything to be this new world. And so we are now here with so let's say, I don't know, is there a BC Hairdressers Act? That act has to be reviewed to see if it's in line with UNDRIP. The Legal Professions Act, it's being challenged in the courts now, but it is completely being rewritten to be in accordance with UNDRIP. Like it's a complete change in our entire legal system, entirely from top
Unreal.
to bottom. And the money that's going into this is extraordinary. And the time it's taking, the effort, the bureaucracy is being built around this, you can imagine. And now that I've been in Victoria, I've seen how big the blob is over there. It's just
Yeah.
getting bigger, the blob.
Yeah.
That's what I call the sort of administrative government that's grown by, what is it? 39% since the NDP came in. Massive growth.
Surreal.
Yeah.
Well, you had an example the other day of how this is starting to apply, like in the Okanagan Falls case
Yeah.
there. I thought that would
Okay.
kind
Yeah.
of a practical implication to kind of drive this home.
So yes. So they're creating a new municipality in the Penticton area that is currently known as Okanagan Falls. And people who know more detail about this will probably say I missed pieces of this. But what I understand is that Okanagan Falls, which is comprised of 3% Indigenous people, is being formed, and now it needs to be formed under the new laws of DRIPA. So listening to a lecture that was been given up there is that the three things that are being required are they have to remove all crown lands from the municipal footprint. I'm not quite sure what that means, but they want all the crown lands like backed out of it. So they don't get the crown lands, presumably because they want those lands. The band there wants it.
Well, now that one, if I can just jump in, like that one really struck me because I mean, just knowing how our regional districts work here, like those crown lands is where all the water reservoirs are that feed the water to the cities. So like
Okay.
this is fairly significant if that's no longer under your control.
Okay, so that's it. They want removal of crown lands from the municipal footprint. They want the renaming of the city and the streets. And they want notification of all proposed development. Okay, so why do you think they want notification?
Yeah, I mean, this
What,
is,
what usually happens, you know, money,
yeah.
power. And so I don't know what's going to happen up there in Okanagan Falls, but that's a living live example of this. Are you aware of anything else that's going? I mean, those were the three things that I understand are being demanded.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the crown lands, I mean like the footprint of a city to me, like if you can't control your water sources, if that is under the purview of an unaccountable level of government as opposed to being represented by the city itself, like that's a non-starter to me. I mean, we're seeing that on so many other levels of, I mean, all of these great dreams of bringing pipelines through the province. I hear that a lot of that is being shut down by this as well, right?
Yes, because um, I often use the example, like I did some research into mine development in BC, and I know some executives who are involved in mining around the world. And I said just offhand, like, okay, so how long does it take to get a mine rolling in Chile? Like from the time you submit your application to the whatever government it is in Chile and to where you're like digging.
Yeah.
He said about 2 years. Okay. Uh, when I checked up here, we're talking between 12 and 15 years in BC. Okay. And then apparently sometimes you can get to the very end of all of this and they just say, nope, we changed our mind. We don't like it anymore. And we shouldn't be under any illusion. This isn't just the bans. Our country is being strangled by extraordinarily hugely funded environmental groups out of the United States. And the biggest one is the Tides Foundation. And nothing's ever written about it. I don't know why, but we all know that they're here and they have been strangling BC ever since basically the time it really got into high gear when Gregor Robertson was made the mayor of Vancouver. Tides got involved through their front man, Joel Solomon, and they started transforming our city, which nobody asked for, decided that we were going to be the city and the province. And this isn't Tides Foundation is funded by like the really wealthy kids of some of the biggest fortunes in America, like the Hewlett Packard fortune is, I think, one of them. Another one is Rubbermaid fortune. Like these are people who also want to preserve the environment, which all of us want nice environment. I get that, but this is a foreign group that's come in here, and there was one approval that went in on a band area up in northern BC where all the bands had actually agreed to it. And then the environmental groups got together they brought in some radicals who we were told they said they were Indigenous, but they were wearing masks and they put up blockades. And lit, fires and scary. And uh, that was managed by these massive environmental groups working together. And so you can see how it's a sort of a recipe for shutting down our province.
Very much
And
so.
I want to be clear, like nobody wants like, lead floating down our rivers and every animal dying and fish dying everywhere and mass kill-offs of nobody wants that. But remember back in the day when we were growing up, when I was growing up, they'd never even planted down the clear cutting. They just let nature take its course. We now do silviculture and we replant. And you can see beautiful trees that are regrowing. And it's incredible, really. I mean, we're making progress, but that doesn't mean BC can be completely shut down. Given the choice between doing a mine here or somewhere like Chile, and we're talking about maybe, let's say, a $5 billion investment or something, and the mine might not even pan out, right?
Very much so.
So uh, this is really, I don't know if you're a sailor, but when you go sailing and you're stuck sailing into the wind and you're not moving and the sails are luffing and you're just there, it's called being in irons.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where BC is. We're in irons.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and everyone that I talk to is struggling that's trying to get some kind of project off the go, and it keeps, colliding with, one of the big things is this DRIPA,
Are
it's
you
it's
hearing that too?
oh yeah, very much so. I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, we've even seen where the land claims are overlapping on some of these things, and then if, like, for example, if you've got beavers in your farm creek and you're trying to pull them out, well, now you have to decide which band you have to go to get permission, and then of course that establishes a claim for that band, which is then contested by the other band, and then they shut it back down. Like it's madness like that all over the place.
Well, and this has actually happened in this Richmond case as well.
Yeah.
Already, the Musqueam band, their chief, Wayne Sparrow, has said they're going to appeal it.
Okay.
So now we're okay.
So it just goes around and around in a circle with different
Yeah.
conflicts. Yeah.
And who's making the money again?
Yeah.
That money isn't going to people on the Musqueam Reserve or to the Cowage. It's going to big law firms downtown, and they love it. They've got whole departments now. Like this never existed back in the day. Now there are entire Aboriginal law departments. I'm sure a lot of lawyers are unhappy with me right now for exposing this, this, you know,
Like, is the solution like to actually devolve powers away from Victoria and out to the regional districts, and then empower the bands to transfer completely to freehold properties, and so one system but a complete devolution of powers, like so that the money stays local, or like what's the solution? I'm just pulling ideas out of the top of my head.
well, the consultation requirement for major BC infrastructure and mines and resources, and the environmental consultation and the Indigenous consultation, I think needs to be like almost, if not completely rolled back, then rolled back to a reasonable amount of time. You can't sit there consulting for 5 years.
Yeah,
And it's because consultation just becomes another word for pay us more.
right.
And that's what the lawyers do. That's their job, to get more, extract more and more money. And I mean, federally, Mark Carney is trying to put a cap on these consultations too. I guess was it Bill C5,
Yeah.
where he's saying these consultations, both environmental and Indigenous, can last no longer than 6 months. And guess who got very upset?
The Indigenous. Yeah.
And shouldn't 6 months be adequate to, I mean, most people cannot afford to wait several years for a project to be approved. Um, you know, you just can't. And the idea for the plan is already gone by the time you try and get there. Like the opportunities come and gone when you're thinking about doing these things. And so, you know, the answers are going to have to be developed. And it's going to be very difficult because I sort of see it as the expectations have now been raised so high.
Right.
This, what is it, prior informed consent? Uh,
Yeah.
well, what does that mean in actuality? Um, Sometimes I think the problem is we've just been out negotiated, and I don't know how the government got so badly out negotiated by council for the bans.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's a transactional and it's all about money. It's always about money. Everything's about money. And uh, um, it's just things we've been out negotiated from the very beginning. And uh, because it's so unpleasant to be called names.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, I
It's
feel
horrible.
like yeah, yeah. It's almost like there's a. I mean, even though it requires political solutions, like I think this is why what I found like having these conversations is so important is that there is a cultural shift that has to happen and a public education about where these things come from and why this has evolved to this point in order to correct course. That everybody wants to do the right thing and is motivated by empathy. But if that history isn't told truthfully, then there's no way forward other than this one model that's being presented to everyone, you know?
Well, I actually think this whole the 215 bodies thing is becoming a very serious problem.
Yeah,
There should have already been an acknowledgement and that these were anomalies. There's no proof to this date that there are any bodies buried. And of course, the gruesome stories that go along with it, that they forced little children to go out in the middle of the night and dig the holes for these unidentified children. Uh, you know, this is a pretty big accusation on Canadians, British Columbians, and people who have been angry with me have said it's wrong of you to uh, demand that they produce the bodies. If your family dies, you shouldn't have to show people where the body is. And I say, well, that's actually not right. If my mom dies at home, say, just dies, I have to report it. I have to get a death certificate. I have to show the body. I can't just say my mom died by, you know, uh, you have to show the body and it's got to be properly documented, right? Just like a
yeah,
baby being born has to have a birth certificate. It's the same. And then if there's an allegation of a murder or like many murders here, you have to, that's a criminal offense and you need to prove the offense.
yeah,
Am I making sense? Like you have to
yeah,
prove that there was a murder. You can't just say it. Say they killed my dog. Well, what's your proof? Um, well, I'm not going to give you the proof. I'm just saying it happened. And I think that Canadians, I did too. We all just felt sick about it. And now it turns out that there have been no bodies exhumed. Money was given to do it. It wasn't spent on that. And this has become, there needs to be a reckoning about that.
yeah,
And I wish that people would just say, look, we made a mistake. Because the more you try and, it's like with any lie, the more you try and cover it, the worse it gets. And maybe if they do the exhumations, they'll be proven correct. Um, but
yeah. And I
right
mean,
now,
a lot of these residential schools, I mean, they operated until fairly recently. So I mean, if this was murder, there are people that still potentially running around who committed those murders and individual families who were affected. So I mean,
correct.
this is sort of like it's like a criminal court case where neither the victim nor the perpetrator is actually fingered, and we're actually being, accused as a collective society of for guilt. And I don't know how that moves forward, you know.
Correct. There needs to be a proper police investigation, which apparently the police tried to start it, and then the band said, no, you can't come here. So if, Drea Humphreys from Rebel News did a whole documentary about it.
Yeah,
And I learned a lot about it from that. Uh, and coming right back to the original thing, the Law Society case is still going ahead. And I mean, there are problems parking up all over on this file. And if I were trying to be charitable to the government, it could be that they're like, wow, this is not going so great. Like, what have we done? Like,
Yeah.
we've now let the genie out of the bottle. This has gone way further than it should have. We were trying to do good things, but in practicality, this is getting really out of control. And this case in Richmond is, if this isn't a clarion call to people to really literally sit down and write a letter to their MLA right now or to David Eby. I mean, we have a petition that we've started. I'd love for people to go to the One BC petition on this. I'm not here to shill for the party, but the petition's important. We want this to be appealed, and we think that, and we want a discussion to begin into the amending of the Constitution of Canada. The other thing is that we would like is we should probably have an inquiry about what's happened here, but that's sort of down the road.
Yeah. Could you send me the link and then I can put it into the description of the video here, like for the petition?
Oh, I'd be happy to.
That'd be great.
Happy to. And I hope I haven't gotten off topic too much here. There's just so much to cover. And is there anything else you wanted me to speak about today?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you've got some more points, we can cover those. I was hoping that we might be able to discover a little bit what the alternative vision is that your party is trying to put forward, because it seems like nobody else is like the existing party is all kind of they might hum and haw a little bit, but nobody ever puts a solution forward. And I think that you guys have been trying to talk a shift in direction, and I thought that might be worthwhile for people to hear what your guys' thoughts are to get to start the discussion rolling.
Well, on the Indigenous thing, I've just come to our website so I don't miss anything. We have a website, onebc.ca, and people can read there. But what we're saying on the Indigenous file is, number one, we demand constitutional reforms to repeal the Indian Act, transform reserves into townships, and unite all British Columbians under one law and one political framework. That's number one. Number two, we would support bans that voluntarily establish democratic governance, financial accountability measures, property rights, and other reforms and programs that empower band members. The key is here empowering the people, the band members, not just the people who sit atop. Number three, defund the reconciliation industry by ending all voluntary transfers of cash, land, and control over public resources on the basis of racial identity or historical grievances. Number four, we would end the practice of mandatory land acknowledgements within the government and government-funded institutions. This is very important. I'll come back to that. Number five, require street names and place names remain in English language. So the land acknowledgements are everywhere now. I'm sure you've noticed.
Oh, yes.
And I will not put those on my signatures, and I will never say a land acknowledgement. I see it as a form of grooming people into accepting that they are bad and they've stolen things from people. And that is, in fact, what they're designed to do, is basically get this mantra going of like, you have no right to be here. In fact, one NDP MLA stood up in the legislature this spring and said, we are all uninvited guests here. Uninvited guests.
That's surreal.
And so one of the discussions that's never held is, you want all the land, but what about the stuff that was added to it by this horrible colonial system? Hydro transmission line, roads, fiber optics, well, you name it.
Yeah, I mean, essentially undermines the entire basis of Canada existing as a country. I mean, it's
So if you get the land, do you get the stuff too? Or do you have to pay, like, Is there a payback for that part? Like, and who's going to manage those things now?
Yeah.
Like, do we ever talk about these details? Who's going to take care of the transmission lines that lead into your sovereign territory? Are we just going to keep doing it? The horrible uninvited guests? We just keep taking care of everything and still be
Yeah.
treated like everything we did was terrible. And but that's not going to fly with most people. It certainly doesn't fly with me. You know,
Yeah, it's a separate tier of rights, and I mean, if this carries on, I mean, at what point are we even a sovereign nation? If they can, if you have a separate government at a local level that can, negotiate with other countries and do all sorts of things that are outside of the realm of Canadian authority, like it just falls
well,
apart.
I don't understand how you can say we want it all. Um, like there have been some chiefs who are on the record saying, F Canada, F your laws, they don't apply to us.
Yeah,
Wow, okay. Um, but you want the transmission lines, you know.
yeah,
And also I think that um, in order to make people behave in a responsible fashion, all of us, whether it's you, me, a band or whatever, you have to have skin in the game. You got to accept some of the risk for what's going on. So these pipelines cost a lot and you just get to take money. What if it doesn't work out? Are you going to take part in the loss or do you just get to participate in the upside? Someone else has to take all the risk. Why?
well, I
That's
mean,
not an equal bargaining power. And if I were a lawyer, I'd say, no, 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 we share in the loss. If this mine doesn't produce anything, we don't owe you anything or whatever. You have to have something that's making your behavior responsible. Otherwise, it's just a free train of no responsibility for the capital investment that needs to go in. And I think that we need to look at that. Any business deal, both people have to be on the hook for the losses as well as the gains.
yeah,
You understand what I'm saying there?
very much so.
Yeah, so I think that, you know, rights for Native people, great, but those rights have to come with responsibilities, just like if you're right to drive a car, sure, you got a right to drive a car, but you are responsible to insure it, da 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 da. We all have rights, but responsibilities come with all of it. And I think that's the piece that's always missing in this discussion for me. Where are your responsibilities? And the first time I got in trouble was during the campaign last year, where I had said on a podcast years ago before I was in politics that the Aboriginal Indigenous people are way overrepresented on the streets of Vancouver, not being taken care of, living this just, I can't even tell you what I see sometimes downtown, and they're overrepresented. I used to say, well, why aren't the bands taking care of their people? And this was apparently just an outrageous comment. But this is also a group who are asking for um, cultural autonomy, uh, uh, financial autonomy, all of this autonomy. But that means then you have to be caring for your citizens of your of your people and your cultural group. You can't just say, well, I don't want to be bothered with them and we'll just keep going up here. And they're not our responsibility. The, I don't know, the settler government can take care of that. I mean, I don't know, this language is becoming crazy. I reject that I'm a settler. I won't say that. I'm a fifth generation Vancouverite. My family goes back to the very beginning of the city. My great great grandfather, actually, Sam Greer, had bought the land of all of Kitts Point and it went right up to Fourth Avenue. He owned it all. And there's a street named after him. He was Irish. They were homesteading down there, and the CPR expropriated it all from him. But the land was never ceded. By he shot a guy. He went to jail, and then was released later. But the thing is, that was so I go way back, and you know I really love this province. I love our city. Um, I love Canada, but we're in big trouble here.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like somehow there needs to be something to bring us all back under one single set of laws
Yes.
and heal these divisions that are being created by all of these stories.
Yes, and there are divisions being created. This is the last story I tell you, up in Pender Harbor, um, or where they're now saying that there's joint decision making with the local seashell band. uh, that they are going to review whether they can keep their docks or not. You've heard about this?
No, I haven't. That's
So
wild.
there's a group called the Pender Harbor Area and Residents Association. I can give you a link to that. I highly recommend that anybody who wants to understand exactly what's happening, it's gone to court. They're saying it's unconstitutional what they're doing, but you can read the petition to the court, which is very well written, easy to read, and the response of the government. And once you've seen those two documents, you'll see the whole story of the DRIPA.
Wow.
And that is when I read that, and I had just been elected, I was like, whoa, this is very serious.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good place for us to end it. I think that, like this is it's quite the story that I'm still struggling to wrap my mind around that we've come to this place. Where can people find you to be able to, because you guys, you and Tara have been on the front lines of this and actually speaking out about the things that nobody else says. So how can people follow you?
Well, we both have X accounts, and we're regularly posting. Tara has her X account, Tara Armstrong, Dallas Brodie. We both have sort of unique names, so you can find us on X. And we have the 1BC website, which is really nice. We've got a beautiful logo, and soon we'll be having even merch and beautiful hats. We believe in 1BC prosperity for everybody, everybody, not just this group or this group. We all have to have a shot at having a good future here, and we can't have our young people all leaving this province.
No, that's right. Very much
So
so.
you can find us there, and also you can just email us at our MLA pages. You can just go tara.armstrong.mla at the BC Ledge, and you can find it, or Dallas Brodie at the Ledge, and you can find our email addresses really easily. So I'm pretty open to people just reaching out and
Fantastic. Cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. And I
thank you
hope we
for
can have you
asking.
back. I think there's a lot of topics that we could get into that's tearing this province apart. So thanks so much for
Yes.
coming on.
Okay, thank you for having me. It was an honor.